大家好啊！今天这个在香港抗争游行进入第4个月的时候，又有重磅的新闻了。美国国会就香港相关的一些法案进行了一场听证会。香港大学学生黄之锋，还有香港知名的那个歌手何润诗，等这个抗暴英雄应邀亲临了美国国会。在后面我也截取了现场的视频大家可以看一下。勇士们那个慷慨激昂的陈词隶属了中国在香港的残暴暴行，甚至指使大陆福建的这个黑社会分子进入香港使用这个暴力殴打香港的百姓他们也指出了香港已有3000多人已经被抓，还有不知人数的被黑暗的特警特务暗地里的这个非法消失。黄之锋、何润诗等在香港这个不畏中共的这个强大的这个残暴威胁，挺身而出，向全世界揭露中共政权在香港所做的一切的黑暗、见不得人的肮脏勾当，要全世界爱好和平民主的国家看清中共的真实嘴脸，凝聚全世界正义的力量，共同抗击中共纳粹主义。在这里我向那个香港人民致敬，也祝香港永远繁荣富强，自由民主永在。
Good morning and welcome to today's hearing on Hong Kong's Summer of Discontent and U.S. policy responses. This is the second China Commission hearing this year on the situation in Hong Kong. During our May hearing, the Commission heard compelling testimony from Hong Kong pro-democracy advocates, including Martin Lee and Nathan Law, who expressed serious concerns about the extradition bill that was quickly moving towards becoming law at that time. That legislation would have put anyone in Hong Kong, including U.S. citizens, at risk of extradition to mainland China, where lack of due process and custodial abuse have been well documented. Over the last 16 weeks, millions of people from all walks of life in Hong Kong have taken to the streets in an unprecedented and sustained show of unity. The protesters have inspired the world and have risked their lives, their health, their jobs, and their education to fight for the future of Hong Kong.
他们为了
Thank you
香
for
港
your
的未
courage
来而
and
抗
thank you for
争。
your bravery. We stand in solidarity with you.
我们感谢他们的勇
As
气，
protests continue throughout the summer,
我们和
Hong
他们
Kong
站在
police
一
used
起。
excessive and unnecessary force to target those engaged in peaceful demonstrations. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for an investigation. The UK
联
has
合国
suspended export
已
licenses
经
for the
开
sale
始
of tear
呼吁
gas
对香港
and
的
crowd
警方
control equipment.
可能
In
的
the
警
House
方
of
暴力开始
Representatives,
进行
Congressman
调
Chris
查。
Smith and I have introduced H.R. 4270, the Protect Hong Kong Act, that would prohibit U.S. exports of police
我和
equipment
另
to
一
Hong
位
Kong.
议员一起
U.S. companies should not be selling equipment used to
发起了
violently
保
crack
护
down
香
on
港法案。
pro-democracy protesters. I hope Congress will pass this legislation as soon as possible.
我希望
Although
国会
consideration
能
of
够
the
尽快
extradition
通过
bill
这
has
条
been
法案。
suspended, the people of Hong Kong are calling for greater accountability and democratic
这
participation.
个抗争已经
It's
从
my understanding
单纯的
that
反
the Hong Kong
反
protesters
修
have
例
outlined
变成
5
了
demands
香港
of
人
Hong
对于
Kong and
更大
Chinese
的民
authorities.
主，香港
I
人
look
更大的
forward
民
to
主
hearing
诉
from
求。
today's witnesses what those demands are specifically, what progress has been made by the Chinese and Hong Kong governments on achieving them,
今
what
天我
remains
希望
to be
听
done,
到
and how
抗
we
争
in
开始以
Congress and
来
the international community
事
might
情
be
都有哪
helpful.
些进展，中
The
共
one
和香港
country,
政
two
府
systems
都
framework
有
was
哪些做
enshrined
法
in the 1984 Sino-British Declaration and Hong Kong's basic law. This is an international treaty signed by the Chinese government
中英联
to
合
allow Hong
声
Kong
明
a high
是
degree of
一
autonomy
项国际
with the
条约
ultimate， aim of electing its chief executive and legislative council members by universal suffrage.
它
The
最终
2014
的
umbrella
目
movement
标。
protests were sparked by the Chinese government reneging on its commitments to make Hong
2014
Kong
年
more
的雨伞运
democratic.
动是由中
It
共
is
当
the
局对
continuing
于
erosion
香
of
港民
Hong
主
Kong's
诉求的忽
autonomy
视引起
and
的。
rule of law that fuel the protests in Hong Kong today. Over the last 5 years, the Chinese government
法
has prioritized control over Hong Kong by stifling free expression and
过去
restricting
几
the
年
space
中，
for
中共
democratic
当局一
participation.
直在打
We
压
have
香港
seen
的
the
言
prosecution
论
and
自由。
sentencing of pro-democracy leaders, the
我们看到
disqualification
他
and
们
removal of pro-democracy legislators, and the introduction of a new
取
national
消
anthem bill that would
民主
restrict
派议员
free
的议
expression.
员资格。
Anson Chan, the former Hong Kong chief secretary and legislative council member, recently offered this insight, and I quote, "If only Beijing would understand what makes Hong Kong tick, What are the values we hold dear? Then they can use that energy to benefit both China and Hong Kong. Instead, they have
最近我听到一位香港议员说，如果北京真的能够理解香港的话，
The heart of the discontent is that Hong Kong's political leaders do not represent and are not accountable to the people.
香港人愤怒的来源就是香港的领导人不懂得香港人的愤怒到底是为什么。如果香港人能够自由地选举他们的领导人，
and if the chief executive and legislative council members were elected without Chinese influence over candidate selection. In light of the continuing erosion of Hong Kong's autonomy and the recent
我希望在
violence
以后
against
香港特首的
protesters,
选举
I
能
believe
够
it is time
不
for the
受
United
到
States
中
to
共的影响。
reconsider its policies toward Hong Kong. U.S.-Hong Kong relations are governed by the U.S.-Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992. That commits the United
美
States
港
to
关系
treating Hong
是
Kong as
在
a separate customs
1992年
territory from the rest of China,
美
so
港
long
关
as
系
Hong Kong remains
法案
sufficiently
下建
autonomous.
立的。
I'm proud to support H.R. 3289, the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act sponsored by
我支持
Senator
香
Rubio
港
and Congressman Smith.
民主与人权
The
法案
legislation
这
will
条法
require the
案，
Secretary of State to certify on an annual basis that Hong Kong is sufficiently autonomous in order to justify
这条法案
special
要
economic,
求
financial,
美
and
国
trade treatment
对
different from
香港
mainland
的
China
自
under
治
U.S.
程
law.
度进
It
行
is
每
time
年
we
每
put
年
the
进行
Chinese
测
government
定，
on
以
annual notice
保
that further
证美
erosion
国
of
继
autonomy
续给予
or
香
crackdown
港
in Hong Kong
以
will
判
cause
断美国是
the
否要
city
继续给予
and
香
by
港
extension mainland China
贸易上的
to
优惠
lose
待
its
遇。
special economic and trade arrangement with the United States. Over the years, Hong Kong has prospered and become the financial center of Asia because of its strong commitment to the rule of law, good governance, human rights,
多年来，香
and an
港
open
由于
economic
对
system.
于
The erosion
法
of
治
this
的
unique
坚持，
system
使
threatens
得
not only
这
the
个城
people
市成为
who
了
attempt to
亚洲的
speak
金融
out,
中心，
but the
经
economic
济上十分
vitality
繁
of the
荣。
city itself. So to be clear, we stand together with the people of Hong Kong and indeed all the people of China when we express our concerns about the human rights violations
我们
of the
在
Hong Kong
关
and
注
Chinese
香港人
governments.
权
Our focus
迫害的
today
同
is
时，
doing
我
right
们
by
和
the
香港
people
人
of
站
Hong
在一
Kong
起，
as they
也和
seek
中
a
国人民
democratic
站在一
future
起。
that protects Hong Kong's autonomy and rule of law.
我
And
们
with-
希望
at
保
this
护
point, I'd
香
like
港
to
的
yield to the
自
co-chair,
治
Senator
和
Rubio.
法治
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important hearing, for your willingness to host it here in the Senate side.
Kind of nice over here.
It's quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little different pace. We had 4 votes yesterday. Today people will be exhausted.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you for doing this. I look forward to our
感谢你。
continued partnership on this commission, and particularly as it relates to this topic. I also want to thank all of our witnesses, especially those
我
who
也想
are
感谢今天我
on
们
the
所
front
有将要
lines
发言的
and
人
have，even
尤其
been
是那些
jailed
站在前线
multiple times,
抗争的
and
人。
we'll hear from them today about the things that have been
我
done
们今
against
天也
them.
将
And your
会听到
commitment
来
to
自他
freedom
们
and
的声音，
democracy
以及
it
你
is
们对
inspiring.
于
It really is
民主和
inspiring for
人
those
权
of us
的
who live in this
捍
republic. It
卫，
reminds us
这些都激励着我
of
们，
why so many of us serve here and what we
也
seek to
提醒
preserve
着我
around the
们
world, and
我
that's
们
why
的
we
工
want
作
to
是
stand
什
with you.
么。
Your fight and the fight of your fellow
你
Hong
们的
Kongers
抗
is
争
the
和你
fight of
们
every
同伴的
human
抗争，
who yearns for liberty and dignity and
对
demands that
于
their fundamental
人
rights be
尊严
respected
和
and be
自
upheld.
由的
Let me
抗
say at the
争，
outset to the people of Hong Kong,
激励
we
着我
stand
们。
with you, and by we I
我
mean
想说，
this
香港
is
人
a
民，
bicameral,
我和你们，我
bipartisan
们和你站在
commitment, as
你
you
们
will
站在
see
一
today
起
and。have seen in the past few days on these efforts across both political parties and every major figure. And not only that, but many Americans stand with
这
you
种
in
支
your fight to
持
keep
来自于
your long
两
cherished
党，
freedoms.
来自于许多的
It
美
was
国
only a
人
few
民。
months ago in May that we held a hearing on Hong
几个
Kong.
月
It was
之
titled
前
Hong Kong's Future and the
5月
Balance,
我
Eroding
们也
Autonomy
举
and
办
Challenges
了一
to
场
Human
关于
Rights.
香港的
At
听
that
证
hearing, and
会。
even before, it was
在
highlighted on the facts that the
这
Chinese
场听
Communist
证
Party has been
以
eroding
及
Hong
以
Kong's
前的听
autonomy
证
and
中，
freedoms guaranteed
中
by
共我们都提到了
the
中共
Joint
当局对于
Declaration
香
and by
港
the
自
basic
治
law.
的
The May hearing
危
discussed the
害，以及他
extradition
们
bill that if
对
it would
于
have
中英
passed
联
would
合
have
声明
exposed everyone
的
in Hong
忽
Kong, and that
视。
includes, by the way, 80,000 Americans who reside there, would have exposed them
美国有
to
8万的
the
公民在
justice
香港居
system,
住
or，the so-called justice system of the
他们
Chinese
将
Communist
会
Party. The same justice system that routinely tortures those in its custody, that denies critically needed medical care, that arrests lawyers for serving their
中
clients,
中共
and
的
that places the
法治系
desires
统
of the Communist Party above every and any demand for justice. The proposed bill exposed the very real and increasing threat to Hong Kong's autonomy. But
逃
few
犯
of us
条
could have
例是对
anticipated the
香港
events that
自
would
治权
follow.
的
Since
进一
June,
步。
The people of Hong Kong
危害。
have bravely taken to the streets for 15 straight
从
weeks
6月开
in more than
始，
400 separate
连
demonstrations
续
involving more
16
than
个
8
星
million
期，香
people
港的抗争者
of
走上
every
街
age
头，
and every background. Recently, there
来
have been
自
very
各种各样
credible
的社会
reports
阶
that have
层
emerged
和
of the police's
他们的年
brutal
龄
treatment of
各异。
demonstrators while in their custody. This weekend, for example, we saw
这
images
周末
of the police
我们
holding
看
down
到
a protester whose head was bleeding and
警
spraying
察
into the wound on the head pepper spray, which is an act of total
我们
cruelty.
看到
We
警察
watched the
向
police throw
一
tear
位
gas
已经受
grenades
伤
at
的抗争
journalists,
者
many of whom are well far
的
away
伤
from
口
the
上
demonstrators. Since the 21st of July, pro-Beijing
胡
thugs,
椒喷雾。
thugs associated with organized crime and the party's United Front activities have violently confronted demonstrators and journalists and innocent passerbys, and the police just looked on, looked the other way.
当
And in some
一些
cases,
人
even
攻击
cooperated.
记者、抗争者
And
的
while
时
detained
候，
demonstrators have
警
been
察却在
beaten
旁
or their
边
faces smashed into the concrete,
熟视无睹。
journalists have photographed these same thugs in detention, quote unquote, smoking and playing on their cell phones after attacking
当
journalists and
这
demonstrators.
些
Although Hong
暴
Kong's
徒
chief
袭
executive may
击
have
了
promised to
记
withdraw the
者和
extradition
抗
bill
争者以
when
后，
the
他们却
Legislative
在一
Council
边抽
reconvenes
烟
in October, the
玩手
government's
机。
violent response to the demonstrations demands accountability.
这些画
And
面
yet,
都被记者
Lam
拍
and the
下。
Hong Kong government refuses to press for any accountability for the
可
violence
是
by Hong Kong
香港
security forces that was committed
香港
and
政府
continues to be committed
到现在为
against
止不
peaceful
愿意去
protesters.
调查
The chief
有关的
executive
警
did not
方警
listen to
方的
the
有关暴
outcry
力行
against the
为，
bill in Hong Kong since its
也
introduction,
不愿意让
rather
他们
tried
去
to
负
ram
责
it through the
任。
legislature. So what's at stake? The Hong Kong government's stubbornness in the face of public outcry has
香
launched
港
one of
政
the
府的
greatest
固
people
执，
power movements we have witnessed in recent memory. The actions of the government and the
加
people
剧了
demonstrate that there are two
这
Hong
场运
Kongs.
动。
The Hong Kong of the government, totally leveraged by the Chinese government, has proven that it is not committed to a free and autonomous future for Hong Kong,
我
nor
们可以
is
看
it one
出，
of rule of
香
law
港政
or of
府
justice.
并没有
The other
致
Hong
力于
Kong,
香
the
港
real
的
one,
保护香港的
is
法
the one of its
治
people,
和自
the
治。
students and youth activists, artists, journalists, doctors and nurses, lawyers, accountants, business people, from every walk of life, the city's people of all ages who have shown us a Hong Kong with a vibrant civic life, prepared to stand up for its own autonomy, democracy,
来
and
自香
liberty.
港各界的
It
人
is
都已
clear
经
that
做
these
好
two
了为
very
他们
different Hong
的
Kongs are colliding,
民主和自
and
治
therefore
抗
the
争的
city
准
is
备，
at a
包括医
crossroads.
生、律师、
The
学
fact of the
生
matter
以
is
及
maintaining
来自
Hong
社会
Kong's
各
autonomy
种
is
职业的
critical to
人。
U.S. interests, and it also has real implications for the United States and for the rest of the world.
香港
Hong
对
Kong's
于美
status as
国
an
的
international trade and investment
对于美国
hub
的利益来
are
说
just
十
as
分的
threatened
重要
as。long as the long-cherished freedoms of the Hong Kong people are, as long as the long-cherished freedoms of the Hong Kong people are being threatened. Threatened, by the way, not by us, but by the Communist Party of China.
香港
So it
的
is my belief that it's
自由
long overdue for the United States and the free world to respond.
正
I
在
hope
受
it
到威
quickly
胁，
pass
并
the
不是
Hong
受到
Kong
来自
Human
我
Rights
的
and
威胁，而是
Democracy
受到来
Act,
自
which
中
I
共的
hope
威
will be
胁
heard。next week in committee, so that we can provide this and future administrations with updated tools to respond robustly and flexibly to the Chinese Communist Party
今
and
天
its
我们的听
proxies
证
who
将
are
会为以
undermining
后
Hong Kong's
的
autonomy. The U.S.
我们提
government
供
and
更
other
多的证据，
democracies
以
need
及
to
如
hold
何
Chinese
应
and Hong
对
Kong
中
officials
共的办
accountable
法
for。their failure to uphold their commitments. The United States and other nations have options precisely because Beijing benefits from Hong Kong's special status, a special status
北
which has
京
made
从
Hong
香
Kong
港
an
的
international
特殊地
financial
位
center
中
built
再获利。
on the promises that Hong Kong made to the world, that China made to the world with regards to Hong Kong, which they now seek to break.
可是
China's
他们
leaders
现
must
在
either
却在
respect
试
Hong Kong's
图
autonomy or know that their
不
escalating
不去
aggression
遵守他
will
们
lead
对
them
世界
to
做出的
face
承诺，
real
也就是
consequences,
保护
not
香
just
港
from the
的
United States, but
自
from the free
治
world.
和自
And I issue
由。
one final warning of this regard. I anticipate fully that they will continue their work to turn the system of government in Hong Kong to resemble more like the one that exists in Macau, one that allows them to intervene in the legal system as they
我相
wish.
信中共当局
So we're here
会
today to
继
examine what
续
has
想办
happened,
法
to
使
look
香
forward
港
to
的政
Hong
府
Kong's
变成
future.
像
There
澳
are
门的
many
政府那
challenges
样。
in our relationship with China, but Hong Kong must remain a priority. Hong Kong is not a Chinese internal affair, and the world
香
has
港问
a
题并不是中国
responsibility
的内政
to
问
help the
题。
people of Hong Kong move towards a future that protects their individual freedoms and provides for civic well-being.
全世界
And so I look
都
forward to
有
hearing
责
your
任去
views
保
in
护
today's
香港
discussion. And I
人对
thank
于
you
民
for
主
your
和自由
courage and for
的
your
追
commitment.
求。
Thank you very much. And
17.
同一栋楼
While I
里
said
面，
back then, Hong Kong's one country, two system
那时
was
我
becoming
说
one country,
香港的
one
一
and
国
a
两
half system.
制变
I
成
don't think
在
there's
逐
any
渐变
doubt
成
among
一国
observers
1.5制
who。have followed recent events. Today, we are approaching dangerous dangerously close to one
现
country,
在
one
我
system.
们
The present
是在
state
逐
of
渐地向一
affairs
国一致
reflects
靠拢。
Beijing's inability to understand, let alone govern, a free society. The ongoing demonstration began
香港的
on
抗
June
争
9th when
从
1
6月
million
9号
Hong
开
Kongers
始
took to the
，100
street
万香
in
港人
protest
走
of
上街
proposed
头
legislation
反
that would
抗
have
逃犯
allowed
条
criminal
例。
suspects to be extradited
这个
from
条
Hong
例
Kong
允
to
许
China,
香港的任何
where there are
人
no
被
guarantees
送到
of the
中国
rule
大
of
陆
law.
接受审
Still,
判。
before the night have ended, Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced the bill's reading would assume and resume in 3 days. Hong Kongers were preparing for the
那
last
天抗
flight
争结束之
on
后，
June
香港
12th.
的特
And
首
then the
林郑月娥
unthinkable
说
happened. Knowing
将
that
继续推
Beijing
动这项
controlled
条
enough
例。
votes in the Legislative Council, protesters surrounded the complex earlier in the morning, successfully preventing lawmakers from convening.
7
I
月
was
1
then
号，
serving
香
my
港
third jail
的
sentence.
抗争
For
者
a
包围
moment,
了
I
立法
wonder
大
why the
楼。
news channel was replaying footage of the umbrella movement. Although it was
早天
not long before I realized Hong Kongers were back with even stronger determination. Lam suspended the bill on June
林郑月
15th,
娥
but
在
fell short
7月
of fully withdrawing it. A historical 2
暂缓
million
了这
damn
项条例，
people
可是并没有
demonstrate the
正式撤
following day,
回。
equivalent to 1 in 4 out of our entire
接
population.
下来，
I'm
香
not
港1/4的
aware
民众
of
走上
anything
街头抗
comparable
争。
to this level of discontent against a government in modern history. I was
我
released exactly 3 months ago, on June
我3个
17th,
月之前
and have
被
since
释
joined
放出
fellow
狱，
Hong Kongers to protest in the most
并
creative ways
开始一
possible.
起和香
In
港人
addition
抗
to the
争。
bill withdrawn, we demand Lam to retract
要求
label on us as rioters,
撤
drop
回
all
条
political
例
charges, and conduct an independent investigation into police
林郑
brutality.
月娥下台，
Some of us
调查
crowdfunded
警
for
方暴力。
newspaper advertisement ahead of the G20 summit in late June, calling for the
我
world
们也
not to
在
neglect Hong Kong.
G20
Others entered the
峰会
chamber
的
of
之前，在
Legislative
各
Council
大媒体
complex
上
on
发
July
广告，
1st.
希
The
望世
same
界
day,
关注
another
香港。
500,000 Hong Kongers protest peacefully. Crowd continued to show up in large number in
越
the
来越多
past
的抗
15
争者
weekends,
走上街
with
头，
more rallies taking place
越来越
almost
多
daily
的
across the
集会。
territories. But the government would not
可
listen.
是政
Instead
府
of
还是不
diffusing
听
the。political crisis, it dramatically
香港的政治
empowered the
危机
riot police. The movement reached a turning point on
很大
21 of
一部分
July.
程度是
That
由
night,
防暴警察
pro-Beijing
引起
thugs
的。
with suspect ties to organized crime
以及
gathered
那
in the
些
Yunnan train station
亲
and
共的
indiscriminately
暴徒，
attacked not just
他
protesters
们
returning
与
home,
黑社会有联
reporters
系，
on the scene, but
他
even
们
passers-by.
在现
The
场
police refused
攻
to
击
show up
抗
despite
争
repeated
者、记
emergency
者
call,
以及只
plugging
是
Hong Kong
通过的
into
行
a
人。
police state with mob violence.
香
On
港
August
在
5th
逐渐的
alone,
变成一
the
座
day
警
Hong
察
Kongers
城市，
participate
越来越多
in
的
a
暴
general
力。
strike. Riot police shoot 800 canister of tear gas to disperse
在
the peaceful
大
mass.
罢工的那
Compare
天
that，to
香港
only 87 fire in the
防
entire
暴警
umbrella
察
movement
发
5 years
放
ago.
放了大量
The
的催泪
police
弹，
excessive force today is clear.
警察
Their
的
excessive
过
use
度
of
暴
pepper spray,
过度行为
pepper balls,
非常的清
rubber
晰。
bullets, beanbag rounds,
他
and
们
water
发
cannons,
射布袋
almost
弹、
all of
水
which are
枪，
imported from Western democracy, are no less troubling. In light of this, I applaud Chairman McGavin and
我
Congressman
希望
Smith
主席
for introducing the Protect Hong Kong Act last week. Americans' company
推
must
动
not profit
保护
from the
香港法
violence
案。
crackdown of freedom-loving Hong Kongers.
香港
Co-chairman Rubio
对于
is
香
also
港自
right
由的
for
伤害
recently
不会
writing that Hong Kong's special
会使
status
得美国的
under
利益受
American law
损。
depends on the city being treated as a separate customs area. Beijing should not have it both ways, grabbing all the economic benefit of Hong Kong's
北
standing
京
in the
香
world
港现在享
while
有特殊
erosion
的
of our
贸易
freedom.
待遇，可是北
This
京
is the
不能
most important
一边
reason why
享
the
有
Hong
这
Kong
种
Human Rights
一
and
边利用
Democracy
着我们的
Act
特殊待遇，
enjoys the
一边
broad
又在打压
support
我们的
of
自由。
Hong Kong civil society. Lam finally withdrew the bill earlier this month.
林郑月
But
娥
just as
这个
protesters
月
have long stopped
终
calling
于
for her
正式
resignation,
撤回条
this
例。
decision was almost meaningless by now. The
可是
movement
现在
is far from
这
over
种正式撤
because
回的
it
意
has
义已
long
经
moved
不是很
beyond
大了，
one
因为
bill
民众
or
希
one
望他
person.
下台。
Our most important demand is genuine structural change in
我
Hong
们
Kong,
最
which
重
means
要
free
的诉
election.
求
Our
是
government's
要求
lack
普
of
选。
representation lies at the heart
我们
of
的
the
政
matter.
府
As I speak,
不能够
Hong
完全代
Kong
表人
is
民。
standing at a critical juncture. The stakes have never been higher. we are confronted
我们
by the
从
huge
来
Chinese
没有面临
military
过这么大的
build-up
危
just
机。
across the border in Shenzhen. President Xi Jinping is unlikely to take hardline action before the upcoming National Day in October.
我认为
But
习近平在
no
10
one
月
can
1
be
日
sure
之前不
what's
可能
next.
采取太过
Sending
强
in
硬
the
的
tanks
政
remain
策，可是
irrational,
我不知道接下来
but
会
not
发生什
impossible.
么。
With Chinese interference in Taiwan, Tibet, and especially
中共
Xinjiang,
对于台
it
湾、
served
新
as a
疆、
reminder
西
that
藏的打压，
Beijing is prepared to go far in pursuit of its grand
都提
imperial
醒着我
project.
们
I was
北
once
京
the
的
face of Hong Kong's youth activism. In this leaderless movement, my
我曾
sacrifice
经
are minimals compared to those
我曾
among
经
us
是
who have
香
been
港
laid off
抗
of protesting,
争运动的领导人，可
who
是
have been
这一次
injured
的
but too afraid of
这一次
even
的抗
going
争是
to a
没有领导
hospital,
人的。
or who have been forced to take their
我
own
我
life,
做出的
to have
贡
each
献
lost
非常的
an
小。
eyes. The youngest of the 1,500 arrested so far is only 12 years old
500
schoolboy.
名
I
被
don't know them
关押
personally.
的被
Yes, that
警
pain
察关
is
押
my
的
pain.
抗争者中
We
最小
belong
的
to
一
the
位才
same
12岁
community,。struggling for our right of self-determination, so we can
我
build
只是
one
这个
brighter
集体中的一
and
部
common
分，
future. A child born
一起
today
为我
will
们的
not
未来
even
抗
have
争。
celebrate his or her 28th birthday by 2047, when the 50 years unchanged policy is set to expire. That deadline is closer to us than it appears. There's no return for us. Decades
我们
from now, when historians look back, I'm sure that
并没有其他，我们没有
2019
我们
will
没有
turn
第二个
out
选
to
择。
have been a watershed. I hope historians will celebrate the United States Congress for having stood on the side of Hong Kongers,
我希
the
望
side
以后
of
的
human
历
rights
史学
and
家们
democracy.
能
God
够
bless Hong Kong. Thank you.
能够，我希望以后的历史界的
a
人都
fight
在
for
参
human
加
rights, and
这
most
场
of all,
抗
a fight
争，
for universal
他们
values. What
在为
started in
普世
June
价
as
值
a
而
1 million
抗
people
争，在为
march
民
has
主而抗
morphed
争。
into a struggle for fundamental political reform in Hong Kong.
我们
Chief
希望香
Executive
港能
Carrie
够
Lam's misjudgments and arrogance
对警察
worsened the situation,
暴力进行彻底的
resulting in
调
a
查，对
total
警察
clampdown
进行
of
彻
the
底的改
Beijing
革。
government over Hong Kong's affairs. To date, more than 1,500 Hong Kongers, the youngest at the age of 12 years old, have been unreasonably
到现
arrested.
在为止，
Sadly,
有
it has
500
become a
名
daily
抗争
occurrence
者
to see
被拘捕，
youngsters being pinned
最
to
小
the
的才
ground
12
with
岁，
head concussions if not
小
being
孩
knocked
子被
unconscious.
压到地上，
On the other hand, riot police
甚至
and
会引
plainclothes
起脑
officers
震荡
have
这样
since
的
early on
危害。
deliberately hidden their ID numbers and warrant cards, making it
警察
impossible for us to even certify their legitimacy,
警
let
察
alone hold
并
them
不出
accountable.
示他们的
On August
警员证，
21st,
然后藏起
police
来他
from the
们警员证
Special
上的
Tactical
身份
Unit
证、
charged
警
into
员证号
Prince
码，
Edward
让
MTR
我们无法
station,
去
beating
追
up
究他们的责
passengers
任。
randomly. They then shut down the station for 24 hours,
他
refusing
们
medical care for those who were
这些
injured,
警察他们
raising
关
even
闭地铁
suspicions
站
of possible deaths
拒
in the
绝
station.
给那些受伤的抗争者
Separately
进
now,
行
they will be
拒绝让
charging
受伤
in
的抗争者
secondary
进
school
行
yards, shopping
治
malls,
疗
and。buses, where young people merely dressed in black can be searched or even arrested without
在
justification.
公共交通
In other
上，一
words,
些年轻人
merely
只是因为
being
穿了
young
黑色的
is a
衣服
crime
就要
in
被
the police
就要
state
被
of
搜
Hong
要
Kong.
被警察搜身。
The protests began with an extradition bill, but at the core, it has always been about
这场
these
运动
fundamental
最开始是
conflicts
由
between two very
反
different sets
逃
of
犯条
values.
例
On one hand, the
引
China
起的，
model,
可是它的
which
最
has
终
no
原因是
respect
两种不
over
同价
human
值观
rights
的
and the rule of
冲
law,
突。
and our hybrid
一
city
方
that has enjoyed these very freedoms for the
是
most of its
自
existence
由
with a
法
deep
治
attachment to these universal values that the United States and other Western societies
我
treasure.
们相信这一点也是
Hong
美
Kong
国和
represents
这种
something
普世
unique
的
in
价
the
值，也
world.
是美国和
We
其
have
他
long
西方国
held
家
dear our rule of law,
所珍视的价值。
transparent institutions, and the freedom of expression in a part of the world.
Chinese President Xi Jinping said in a cold storm meeting that China would never embrace the judicial independence in the West. This is why people in Hong Kong are trying hard to reject the extradition bill
说
because
中
we
国
do
中
not
国永
believe
远
in
也
a
不会去
country
采
who
取
looks
西方
down
的
on
这
human
种
rights,
民主制度。
disqualifying our
这也是为什
legislators
么
and
香港人
kidnapping our booksellers. We want to protect our legal system as the last barrier against
希望
Beijing's
保
political
护我们的
interference.
司法体
Apart
系，
from asking for the
免受北京
withdrawal
的
of the
侵
bill,
蚀。
Hong Kong people also demand for an investigation into police
我们也
brutality
要
to
求
save Hong Kong from turning
调
into a
查
police
警
state.
方暴力。
More importantly, we demand
更
for the
重要的是
universal suffrage. We deeply believe that without any structural political reform and a government chosen by the people, there is no possibility for Hong Kong to restore prosperity. We cannot have a society compromising the interests of individuals. The voice of these people should always be heard. Unfortunately, our government ignores our demands by saying that we have no stake in the society. Our student union members are detained, followed, beaten, and threatened. During the detainment, one of our student union members were told by the police that it was reasonable for them to rape some female protester when they frequently work overtime. Besides, the authority tries to stop us from having peaceful class strike when more than 50,000 students participating in it. People who side with Beijing are now advocating to install surveillance cameras inside the classroom to monitor teachers and students who dare to support class strike and support the movement. This apparently violates our academic freedom and freedom of speech. This is the right terror created by the Beijing government, which should be alerted by all people here. Nowadays, students and Hong Kong people are even ready to die for Hong Kong, and some already did. They believe that the only limit to their freedom is their death. This is the ultimate sacrifice for the motherland, and we must not forget them. Many students face strong objection from their family. Some of them are even forced to leave home. But they still choose to head to the front line, carrying a letter with their last will. They are determined. They understand that the price of freedom is high. It always has been. But it is a price they are willing to pay, and it is a path of liberation they are willing to choose. We do not fight for freedom out of passion. Passion will burn out. We fight for freedom from a sense of duty and dignity. China is rising. China is using its nationalism and invasive economic dominance to colonize small countries and put intense pressure on people and companies like Cathay Pacific who do not conform to them. Teachers, students, civil servants, businessmen are all facing political purge in Hong Kong. This new form of imperialism of China poses a severe threat to Hong Kong. This is a clash of values and system. We need to contain the Communist Party of China. Offering help to Hong Kong is the primary move to contain China. One country, two systems will expire in 2047. U.S. government should help Hong Kong people have the right to decide our future. Therefore, we urge the U.S. Congress to pass the Human Rights and Democracy Act to expand the current sanction list to all individuals who infringe our human rights. Moreover, if a genuine universal suffrage cannot be achieved immediately, our autonomy and rule of law will continue to erode. The situation of China manipulating Hong Kong as a backdoor for trading with Iran and North Korea will also continue. Then, the U.S. government should not acknowledge the special status of Hong Kong. U.S. must send a strong signal that this special status should be cancelled if Hong Kong lost its autonomy in order to put pressure on China.
香港的自治受到破坏，那么这样的贸易优惠待遇应该被取消。
With such an assertive policy, it demonstrates that America will no longer tolerate totalitarianism.
这样强硬的政策可以表示出美国对于人权迫害的不容忍。
As Thomas Jefferson once said that he would be forever against any form of tyranny, and I believe this is the time for Americans to stand up for 香港時代革命。Thank you.
我認為這是美國為香港站出來的非常好的一個時機，支持學生逃犯條例。香港人同時通過做帶有抗爭口號的月餅，形成人鏈等各種各樣以及建立連儂牆各種各樣有創意的方式表達他們的訴求。香港人。
Thank you very much.
关键的问题是自治。2014年，他们中共拿走了普选权。2016年又取消了一些立法议员的资格。2019年，他们又试图推动这个逃犯条例。我想问，你们现在会如何形容香港的自治情况？在上一次的国会听证中，我就表达了我知道“一国两制”正在变成“一国1.5制”。香港和中共政府正在试图将这个国际城市变成警察城市。我现在想说，“一国两制”已经彻底的失败。我认为现在也是我们寻求两党支持的最佳时机，支持香港的自由抗争，这是一个对与错的问题。现在香港人中有非常多的人不敢表达自己的想法，他们担忧政府对一些公司的压迫，要求他们不要让员工说话。这对于香港的经济来说，经济繁荣来说是非常困难的。我们现在已经几乎是一个中国城市的感觉，人们不敢表达自己的想法，不敢表达自己的立场。我想举一个例子，最近有一位不具名的歌手为香港写了一首类似于是香港国歌的感觉。他不具名的原因就是因为他担心自己会被拘捕，所以我觉得这一点也这个事件也表现了现在在香港的一种状况。去年
concerns that Hong Kong is becoming more likely like any other Chinese city.
美国发出了这样的担忧，就是香港会变成另一个中国城市。香港的自治正在危险之中。我在面见美国政府官员的时候，我会告诉他们，中共已经忽视了中英联国声明，他们已经宣布中英联合声明已经死亡。我希望你们能够通过全球马格尼斯基法案，并呼吁你们的同盟国也通过这样的法案来保护香港。1989年以后
，This has been echoed by the chief executive when she endlessly has been having these kind of ridiculous press conferences where she says nothing. One thing she does say is
林郑月娥多次开新闻发布会，一直在说我们要恢复经济秩序，可是她却完全不提香港的政治问题。所以我想提，香港的经济并不是在完全的造福于香港人民，而是在造福一些巨富。我认为经济
If I could pick up quickly on Sunny's reference to autonomy.
应该是为所有人
Autonomy, what it means
服务
for the
的。
Communist Party is we only need to look at the so-called autonomous regions in Tibet and Xinjiang. What autonomy means is no cultural, no language, no history, no right to believe or practice your faith under the Sinicization of religion.
我们
which
只
is
要
not
看一下
tomorrow.
新疆和西藏的这种所谓自治，就知道中共的自治的概念是什么了。也就是说，你完全无法去坚持自己的信仰，你们的也完全无法坚持你们的文化。
What kind of Chineseness? Well, Xi Jinping's notion of Chinese.
他们只想要你变成中国人。什么样的中国人？是习近平概念中的中国人。 可是香港是一个非常复杂的地区，他们有着非常复杂的历史和文化。很多人都还在探讨什么叫香港人。我认为自由就是去能够有权利去定义我到底是谁。我认为中共的这种自治根本就不是自治。
Sharp power expansion from China to Canada and Australia. The Belt and Road Initiative
中共对加拿大
implies
和澳洲的这种渗透，以及他们通过“一带一路”的这个项目对其他国家的这种渗透。
After entering WTO, after promise on joint declaration, and even having the negotiation with US on the trade deal. We all are aware the uprising China model is just the expansion of authoritarian rule and without any
扩张的中国模
on
式
international orders with liberal
是
values.
对
And that's
全
imply
球
and explain
民主
why Hong Kong matters
民
to
主
the
价值的一种
world.
挑
Because
战
Hong。Kong people, we stand on the forefront to confront the authoritarian rule. And Hong Kong
香港
people
人
is aware that
是
Hong
站在
Kong
最前
is the
线，
forefront
在
and
挑
will
战的这种
confront the
在挑战着这种
authoritarian
专制的
crackdown.
集权。
If Hong Kong fall, and the
如
next
果
may be the
香
free
港
world.
倒下的话，
And
那
I
么接下来
strongly
下一个倒下的
realize
可能就是
now is the
整
time for
个
the
的这个
US
自由世
Congress
界
to。pass the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. And also, I hope US government
我
to
希望
reveal its
国会
foreign
能够
policy
通过
to
香港
China
人权
to prioritize
人权
human
与
rights
民主法
issue.
案。
Especially now, we are not only suffering in the political, but even humanitarian crisis.
现在我们不仅
The
是
first
在
time for
经历
me
一
to
场
be
政
in
治危机，
prison
也是
is
在
2
经历一
years
场
ago.
人
I
道主义
remember
危机
I。watched TV news on
2
how
年前
Beijing authorities announced the
我
no
看电
term
视的
limit
时候
for president in the
看到
future,
了
which just let me realize that when I was in
北京当
prison
局
and the one who locked me up in prison, which means the authoritarian rule represented by President Xi, will be the Emperor Xi. So that's
我
the
当时看到
uphill
了北
and
京当局
long-term
无限期的
battle.
延长了
And in
这个中共主席的这个任期
no，matter
那么
me
我就意识
or
到
Sunny or others will be at
将
the
我
age
关
of
进监狱
50.
里面
And
的
I
这
hope
个习近平，他
after
现在已经
28
成为了
years,
几乎
Hong
是一个
Kong can
君主一
still
样
be
的
our
这样的
hometown
角色。
with freedom and democracy. And I think it's the time to thank all the congressmen and senators in the past few years and even in the past few decades, really paying attention to
我
protest
现在
movement in
想
Hong
要
Kong.
借这个
We
机会
stand in
感谢
solidarity
那些
We
在
stand
过
as
去
one.
几个月，在
Hong
过去
Kongers
几年中
never
一直
walk alone.
关切
Thank
着
you.
香港形势
Thank you
的
very much.
美国的议员们。
Let me thank the staff of the Commission for all the work that they did in preparing this hearing. Let me thank again the panelists, and to our friends from Hong Kong. Let me thank you.
我想感谢
for
所
your
有为
courage
准
and
备这场
commitment.
听证
I mean,
会
I
做
think
出
what is
努力的工
prompting
作人
action
员。
here in the Congress is, your courage that we see unfolding on our television screens and we read about in the newspapers. I have to tell you, I think for everybody here,
我
you
想
have
今
been
天
an
在场的
inspiration.
所有人
And,，
你们
you
都
know,
激
as
励
I
着
said at the
我。
beginning hearing, we're a diverse political group
我
on
们
this
今天有一个
commission.
非常多元化的这个
And, but
政
on
治
this issue, we're
政治
in
组成。
solidarity with you. We believe that the
可是
future
我
of
们
Hong Kong ought to be determined by the people of Hong Kong.
一起站
And
和香港人站
again,
在一起。
I can't thank you enough for being here. So, thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.